Regardless, I'm probably going to take a couple days off because my brain needs a rest after the last couple of days. Now we know for sure that there was storage in the bow of the boat. All right, so now at this point, I am pretty sure that the Triton was there all day. They didn't switch out the boats. And I'm also pretty certain at this point that this is a real video because there's one single frame where you can see Bart's boat and you can also see the toes of somebody like dangling them off the water. So if the picture or video were AI, it would be a really bizarre thing for it to just kind of throw in. But there's zero question in my mind that this video has been altered. So then the question becomes, why would they alter this video? And the only thing that logically makes sense to me is to alter the identity of the two girls. Because if Carter is the boy in red, Wyatt is the boy in the American shorts, Bart's brother Brooke being the one in the navy blue shorts, and then Ike being the one in the teal shorts. Then we've got Warren up here with somebody in this red striped swimsuit and the girl in the teal swimsuit with the backwards hat. So in this picture, this would be Brooks, this would be Ike, this would be Wyatt, this would be Warren, which would leave this to be Carter. Now, whoever this is seems to be very cuddly with Carter. Like, too cuddly, in my opinion, for it to be like a mother or a family member. Thinking about it a lot from the timeline that we have been told. And what we haven't really been factoring in again is the party. Because remember, Warren said he went to the party, but instead of talking with all of his friends, he went upstairs to go talk with his girlfriend's dad. Now, those families are tight. So if that dad of Ava, if that conversation with the dad didn't happen, then they would automatically know that they were lying. So I've been saying for a while that the girl was somehow involved. And mind you, everybody's back on land now. They're getting ready to do the fireworks and everybody's swimming and drinking still, blah, blah, blah. So what's the excuse for no pictures at that party? They've explained it all away during the day, but at this point, they're all just being teenagers and having fun again, right? So I'm thinking that the brunette girl is Ava, the girl whose house they went to. And she's pretty close with Warren and the Pyrone family.
And they're full speed running. And then after that, I didn't see them anymore. I think you were on the boat. You start from there?
Yeah, so after we planed off, Wyatt kept the boat pinned the whole way in. We ran into the mouth of Fort Bayou, where we came from originally. And we turned into Fort Bayou, went in the channel, ran probably 500, 600 yards into Fort Bayou. Wyatt had jumped out of the boat, put the plug back in the boat so access water. So water didn't keep pushing and filling back the boat.
According to their own words, they went into the mouth and then they turned and they went about 500-600 feet. Now, mind you, the party house is right around, but they go past it and then loop back around. However, Warren just admitted that at some point they had to stop and Wyatt jumped in. And even then, you heard him stuttering over the story. Like, it wasn't a smooth transition because I think they dropped her off. Which would explain why they would go back to this party, because obviously they can't cancel the party. That looks really suspicious. Then my theory has always been that the guys all like broke off and like talked to the parents about what was going on. And that's when they formulated their whole, we'll call her and then we'll call the Coast Guard plan. Remember, she is related. Somehow I can't figure out, but she is related through marriage to the lieutenant that wrote up the very initial report we've seen. Because remember how Morgan claimed that the picture of the boat stuff was circulating around Snapchat and stuff, even though Christine didn't post it to her Facebook page until the next day. Listen to this.
His mom was, what was he wearing? And so we were trying to remember what color his shorts were. We couldn't quite figure that out.
I said black.
Yeah, I think we said black.
I really did. He was wearing navy blue shorts?
Yeah, it was like dark blue shorts.
Dark. I just said black because I was trying to piece everything together and help out.
And so at this point, we're freaking out. We don't know where our friend's at. And the girl that took the picture, she was like, okay, well, I just took this picture of today. This is what color swim trunks he was wearing. And his mom asked for that to post on Facebook to say, if you've seen him, whatever, this is what he was wearing.
So remember, the girl who took the picture with the digital camera was on Wyatt's boat at the beginning of the day and then was there with them at night when they were having this discussion. So she had to have been there at the beginning and at the party at the very least. Then we remembered that the original shorts picture, well, that wasn't the color of his shorts, as we now know. So we also know for a fact that this picture did not get sent to Christine until July 5th, meaning that they had to have had that picture and then not sent it to her for hours. Because they also said this.
And so that's what we sent to her. or that's what she sent her, because we were just trying.
So they corrected themselves. He said, we sent it. No, she sent it. And on July 5th, Christine said that they have been up for almost 48 hours straight. And then the very next post above it are the same pictures, but better quality. Why did it take so long to get these pictures to them? Oh, and y'all, now that I said that, I realize, so all of these pictures had to come from the same digital camera, right? Meaning this picture did as well. And since I've already proven that this picture had used AI to do something weird because, you know, there was no little bar here, only explanation for using it AI on just this little part would be to obscure the reflection that was in this pole of the person who was taking the video. Or the pictures. Oh my God, yes. That makes sense. Love it when I figure that stuff out in real time for you on camera. So it makes sense to me that this photo video thing was altered to cover up this girl's swimsuit. Because let's face it, this swimsuit is the ugliest thing. It has like supposedly like sleeves and it's a tankini, but it goes like in a weird cut, but it's ugly. It's ugly and it's clearly not what these debutante beauty queen girls are wearing to a 4th of July beach party. So I'm like 70% sure that this is Ava. Oh wait, oh my God. Wait a second. Shown y'all guys before that there's 4 boats out here in this little cluster, right? But I'm looking at these weird pink lumps and stuff at the front of the boat, Bart's boat here. Is that a pile of life vests? Because I'm realizing there's not 20, 30 people on all of these boats. Like I'm seeing 10, 12 people here tops. Let's not forget what a full house looks like on these boats. Because even in this video at the meetup place, there's not 20, 30 people getting ready to get on these boats. I mean, the boat left at 9:56 according to the GPS. We got like 7, 8 people here, like 6 people here. And also, if they were legitimately needing to be towed and they were trying to get the water to run off, why are they all spread out on the boat? Why are they on the boat in general? Why didn't they just get off on land or get on another boat? Trying to get the boat to tip up and go planing, why do you have over half the boat on the front of the boat? These are experienced fucking fishermen. They know better than that. Yeah, I can't believe I've never thought of that before. If the boat was sinking, why are they even on the fucking boat? Yeah, and if it was so common and so easy to get, you know, rides back with other people, you know, strangers on Horn Island, why did they need to load everybody on the boat? Why were they yelling at Nolan to get on the boat? They didn't need to get him on the boat. And now that I'm looking at this, doesn't it look like Warren is on the phone? Could this have been when he was calling his mom 8 times? Also, one more thing that stuck out to me.
We called law enforcement. I was with Wyatt at the time. After we left Jackson's house that night, I was with Wyatt, and one person we were with saw that their location was headed towards Wyatt's house. And so Wyatt got on the phone with 911 and was like, hey, these people are on the way to my house or already at my house. My mom and my dad are there alone, and they know nothing about this.
He stumbled over his words from beginning to end in that story, so I don't believe any of it. But the one thing that sticks out to me was the phrasing, they don't know anything about this. If people are heading over to your house, why wouldn't you call your mom and dad before you called 911? Because it sounded like he was trying to keep his parents out of the loop of this story, which as a teenage boy implies that you have something to hide. Just a lot of different things to think about, right? Oh, these little liars. I told y'all that Jax was the ringleader. I told y'all. He sat in this interview and he was telling stories about shit that he wasn't even there to witness. So let's break down some of the stuff that I heard in this interview. Let's start with Warren's first phone call, because y'all will remember that Warren said that he was over at Ava's house for that 4th of July party when they all started realizing that Nolan was missing, and he called Miss Christine at 11 o'clock.
One of the first things I told Miss Christine Wells in the first phone call that ever occurred with anything to do with Nolan Wells being gone, because I was the first person to call Miss Christine about anything. First phone call, anything to do with Nolan Wells, was me making a phone call to Christine Wells. And one of the first things I said to her, with multiple witnesses here, pull up the phone call if you want. She said, oh, well, Nolan's location is with y'all at, you know, where the house we were at. And I was like, well, no, he left his phone with us. I told her this.
And yesterday, the same time that this interview came out, Christine Wells said this.
360 says that he's on land, and he was like, well, no, I mean, when we have his phone.
So both versions of the story say that Warren didn't tell her about the phone until after she confronted him with the 360. Now, Warren tells Miss Christine that he knows somebody in the Coast Guard and that he's going to call them, which is very fucking different than calling the Coast Guard, which absolutely explains why the Coast Guard came out and said at first that they had not received a call from the kids that night. The Coast Guard's initial statement said they weren't informed until 12:30. Then the Coast Guard later changed their story and said, oh wait, actually we did. And it seems to me that that first call was most likely an off the record to a friend kind of deal, which means these people freaked out and didn't call the Coast Guard until after all these people showed up at Jax's house. Which would explain why in the course of this interview it went from Warren called the Coast Guard to we did. Now, when the subject turns to how the family got the phone back from these boys, you'll notice that there was a couple slip-ups.
Warren, you weren't at the house, and so you weren't there when they came to get the phone and all that. So
now remember, Warren just said that he wasn't at the house when the phone was got. And then Morgan talks about getting a phone call from one of the people in Christine Wells' group.
And how did they get the phone back?
So I got a call from a kid we went to high school with. He called me just asking me questions. He saw people posting on Snapchat, like the picture that was circulating.
Except this picture wasn't posted until July 5th. So how could this picture have been circulating on Snapchat that night? But let's continue.
And he called and he was asking questions. He was like, where's Nolan? When's the last time y'all seen him? And then he was like, so where are y'all at? And I told him, I said, we're at Jax's house. And then Warren got on the phone, and I don't know.
So they come to my house, right? And they kind of
Hold on, before we get there. Was it confrontational or was it just just trying to find? It was confrontational already.
Wouldn't y'all agree? He was 110%. He was very confrontational.
And when did was this on the night of the 4th or the next day?
This was the night when this was before they came and got the phone.
So this is the night of the 4th, yes.
You guys are missing a part of the story. How did you get from Ava's house to Jax's house? Because Miss Christine is watching you guys on the Life 360. So suddenly she's seeing the phone leave one location and go to another. Of course I would be upset. And now all of a sudden Warren is there when the phone stuff starts happening? He's listening to the phone call? Now I need y'all to remember that Warren also said that the phone was in his truck on the first conversation, as we have from this report. Meaning if we were to believe Warren that he was not there when everybody showed up looking for the phone at some time in between 11 and 1 a.m., so then that would mean after they heard this angry phone call, Warren gets the phone out of his vehicle and puts it in Jax's house and then leaves.
There's probably like 10, 15 people in my house I don't even know. And they're all up in our faces, going crazy, asking where Nolan is, and we don't know. And finally they get into Wyatt's face, and they're like, where's your boat? Where's the boat at?
Demanding his address.
Demanding his address and stuff like that. And he finally ends up giving it to him. We give them the phone. They have the phone at this point. Then they get the address to his house. Then they go to his house. And they're searching all over his boat, what I heard and stuff like that. Well, anyways, I don't really know much about that. But they come back to my house at around 1 o'clock in the morning.
We called law enforcement. I was with Wyatt at the time after we left Jax's house that night. I was with Wyatt, and one person we were with saw that their location was headed towards Wyatt's house. And so Wyatt got on the phone with 911 and was like, hey, these people are on the way to my house or already at my house. My mom and my dad are there alone, and they know nothing about this. But Wyatt's mom actually, when they were looking at the boat, they were actually walking from the boat, and she came out and started talking to them.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Wyatt, Morgan, and Jax were all together. Warren was gone for some reason at this point. 10 to 15 people just barge into your house. Don't know why your grandparents weren't around. That might explain some things, huh? Guess y'all had the house all to your fucking self that weekend. But then they ask Wyatt for his address so that they can go look at the boat. Wyatt gives them the address. They start heading over there. Wyatt and Morgan get into a car and leave Jax's house. Somebody else that you were with that we aren't hearing about is tracking someone else's phone. I don't know if it was somebody who was with the group that they had access to, or if they were tracking Nolan's phone and they saw it was heading to Wyatt's house. And even though Wyatt gave them the address, and instead of calling his parents, he calls 911 and tells them, my parents don't know anything about that's going on. Can you send police over there? Now, mind you, it was about half an hour after being on the phone with Warren that Christine was able to actually call and report him missing. But she was having to go back and forth and go down to all these different agencies because nobody would fucking help her. And frankly, I want to know why all of this confrontation was left out of the fucking report. Like, if this family had to be removed from 2 different properties by the police, why is there no record of that? And in fact, it wasn't until after these confrontations that MDMR and Ocean Springs Police apparently had their little conversations about who was going to be taking over the case. Because remember, the Jackson County Sheriff Lieutenant told them that deputies had spoken with several friends that had traveled to the island on the vessel with Nolan, and that when they were left, he was in the company of an unknown female. So now, even though Warren had supposedly called the Coast Guard, all these family members are telling the police that the kid is missing. These are the people that last saw them. They're all like, we last saw him on the island. Still, the deputies said that they did not have reason to believe that there was any water-related exigencies or emergencies. Don't worry, y'all. I've got a lot fucking more to say about this stuff, so come back for part 2. I'm going to be immediately recording it because Warren fucked up pretty badly in this interview, and I'll show you why. Where we had left off, Warren had already called Miss Christine, and then they somehow ended up at Jax's grandparents' house. That's where they all stayed that weekend, and so that's why Nolan's keys were over there. They had to have been at the grandparents' house, who mysteriously never showed up during any of these confrontations. Somehow the phone had gone from the party that they were all at to Jax's place, and then Warren left after a phone call to Morgan. According to them, 10 to 15 people showed up and just walked into Jax's house and demanded the phone. Wyatt gave the address in which the boat was at. They all start migrating over there. Then Morgan and Wyatt and another friend are tracking their 360s and seeing that they're going over to Wyatt's house. Then they call 911 to tell them that the police are on the way to his house. Then they're searching the boat, and then they come back to Jax's house around 1 o'clock in the morning, according to him. Mind you, that's when they explain to the police about their friend being missing. And so then the report says at 1:38 in the morning, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office say that they spoke to several of the friends that were on the vessel with Nolan, saying that he was in the company of an unknown female. But Morgan, Jax, and Warren all claimed that they did not travel to the island on the same boat as Nolan. So who did they talk to? Because it sounds to me like they had told the police that they were on the same boat as him. Keeping in mind that this is what Warren told Miss Christine.
Named Katie. And so then it turned into, Katie is also missing. No one can find her. And the explanation of no one knows this Katie, like we've never met her.
And Tristan said this.
I was talking on my other buddy's phone, talking to Warren. He was dialing Coast Guard because he hung up the phone and was like, hey, this is them, bye, and hung up the phone. And that was the last time I talked to him.
Mind you, Tristan is friends with Katie. They are mutuals. I have confirmed this. So now that we've got that timeline fucking straight, let's back up to something that Warren said during this interview.
But if you're motivated enough to do it, yeah. Like, I made a phone call to my mom, and I had to call her like 8 times before she picked up because either her service was bad because she was on the back side of the aisle on the south side, or my service was bad, and it was just hard to get through.
Do y'all see that? Let me play it again slower for you.
Either her service was bad because she was on the back side of the aisle on the south side, or my service was bad, and it was just hard to get through.
Oh no. Not only did Warren confirm that his mom was on the south side of the island, but Warren himself said that if you're motivated enough, you can call somebody. I tried calling my mom 8 times. Yet this is what he said last time.
A little off the island, you have cell coverage. And even on the island, like I called my mom when we were on the island, it was fine.
So which is it? Did you call your mom with ease, or did you try to call her 8 times because you were motivated to get in touch with her? But Warren wasn't the only one to slip up, because listen.
And he's on the phone with Cito, and he's trying to get them on the phone. And as he stated in the moment, he's like, Cito's just asking all these dumb questions. I can't figure out what's going on. And so finally hangs up. And after the trim to the motor started to work again. So they manually trim it down by the buttons on the motor, trimmed it down. And some electronics started to come back on, and they got the boat to crank over, and they're like, all right, untie us.
So first off, Jax just proved that the boys put the phone on mute during the call with Cito. Because I've listened to the entire 8-minute call, and at no point does they ever say anything about them asking all these stupid questions. Then he said after they hung up on the Cito, that's when it started working again, and they said, okay, untie us, implying that it had been tied up to the other boat the entire time. But we see in this video that they are hauling the line back in right here as he's on the phone. See, you can see right here where the line is being pulled in from across the way where the boat is stationed. Meaning he had already hung up with Cito at that point, and he had to have been on the phone with someone else. And what we see here is, once again, we have an interview where they go into so much detail about stuff that doesn't fucking matter.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and first off explain a boat.
We fucking get how a bilge pump works. We get it by now. Stop fucking talking about the bilge pump. What we actually want to hear about is the multiple stops that were made before ending up back at the grandparents' house before they even took the boat to the boat dock. We want you guys to explain how the Cito was canceled by the grandfather on the captain's private line before you guys had even hung up with Cito. That's why nobody believes a fucking word that you are saying. Because I showed y'all yesterday how AI had clearly doctored these photos. If you missed it, look, silver pole. Look, no silver pole, it's actually white. And if you look at this picture in the grandparents' driveway of the Triton, you will see that the little handrails are not leaning over. You will see that the rails are going straight up and down and not leaning, which is why I also suspect that the identity of whoever this is was intentionally covered up. Because first off, who wears this weird swimsuit thing? This is somebody who, if they were with them, would have stood out in a crowd. But this woman who's in a red striped swimsuit with a white baseball cap shows up in a lot of different pictures, just oh so obscured. Here she is again, handing out beers on Bart's boat. So I personally suspect that whoever that was in fact on the Triton, and they used AI to change her clothing and to obscure her identity. Because I think this was either Warren's mother or Wyatt's stepmother, which would explain the older female voice people have said they've heard on the Cito. Because otherwise, why would he need to call his mother 8 times? Unless, according to his own words,
If you're motivated enough to do it, yeah.
because remember, there is a 4th boat out there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Holy fuck, I just accidentally stumbled onto something that literally is concrete proof. Oh my god, next video coming. Oh my god!
Forget whatever comes next for a moment. The more important question is what the official record actually establishes right now. Because before investigators can move forward, there is one distinction that still refused to disappear. Go back to Warren's exact words. Not the interpretation, not what people think he intended, the words themselves. According to the account presented here, Warren told Christine that he knew someone with the Coast Guard and that he was going to contact them. But saying, I know someone and I'm going to call them is not the same thing as saying, I called the Coast Guard. Those are two separate actions. And that difference became significant because the Coast Guard's initial public statement reportedly said they were not notified until around 12:30 that morning, before that account was later changed. So, what actually happened? Was an emergency notification formally placed, or did someone contact a personal connection and believe that was enough to get the situation moving? The MDMR incident report provides one important piece of the timeline, but it leaves another part frustratingly unclear. According to the report, dispatch records indicate that the Coast Guard was notified sometime around midnight on July 4th, roughly within the same period when Christine made her own call to authorities. That portion is documented. But the report does not appear to establish exactly how that first Coast Guard contact was made. Was it an official emergency communication that created a case and activated a response? Or was the first attempt simply a personal call to someone connected to the Coast Guard? Those possibilities matter because they could lead to very different responses. And if the first contact really was informal rather than an official emergency notification, it raises another question. Could that help explain why the earliest hours of the search unfolded the way they did? 6 weeks later, the distinction remains one of the unresolved details surrounding the timeline. Then there is Nolan's phone, and this is where the story becomes much more personal. Because suddenly, this is no longer just about the wording of a report, or the technical difference between two types of calls. It is about a mother trying to understand what happened to her son, while watching pieces of his digital trail appear somewhere else. According to multiple accounts referenced in the case, Nolan's phone did not remain in one location that night. At some point, it was reportedly found inside a friend's truck. By itself, that detail proves very little. Phones get passed between friends. People leave them behind. And on a chaotic night, with roughly 15 people reportedly arriving at a house while questions were already piling up, a phone changing hands would not necessarily be unusual. But the real significance may depend on what happened next, and where that phone was during the hours when Nolan himself could no longer be accounted for. Christine was not simply sitting beside her phone waiting for someone to tell her what was happening. She was watching Nolan's location through Life 360. On her screen, a small indicator was moving. And according to the account presented here, the movement she was seeing did not appear to match the information she was receiving over the phone at the same time. That detail changes the emotional reality of the night. Imagine being a mother whose son has suddenly disappeared. Someone is speaking to you, offering one version of events, while the location data on your own screen appears to be showing something different, a phone moving, changing position, heading somewhere you were not expecting. What do you trust? Person on the other end of the call, or the information updating in front of your eyes? For Christine, that conflict reportedly became impossible to ignore. The explanation she was hearing and the movement she was watching no longer seemed to fit together, and this does not require assuming that anyone deliberately lied. It does not require deciding what happened on the island. It requires looking at the timeline as it was described. An emergency notification and a personal contact can create very different chains of response. And when a location tracking application appears to show a device moving in a way that nobody has explained, the emotional impact can be immediate. Fear becomes urgency. Urgency becomes action. And according to the account of that night, Christine's alarm was not based on a theory. It came from trying to reconcile what she was being told with what she could see happening on the screen in front of her. That unresolved mischap is where the next phase of the night begins. Because once the location continued changing, and once the information coming through the phone no longer appeared to line up with what Christine was seeing, she did not simply remain at home waiting for an explanation. She went looking. And she was not alone. Family members and friends began moving toward the same situation, trying to locate a young man who was missing while his phone appeared to be somewhere else. Reports indicate that roughly 10 to 15 people eventually gathered at the house that night. They were not detectives. They were not trained search teams. They were people who knew Nolan, cared about him, and were suddenly confronted with a location trail they did not understand. And that is where the night begins to become even more difficult to reconstruct. Because the question was no longer simply where Nolan was, it was where his phone had gone, and why the location data appeared to be taking everyone somewhere they had not expected. If this were your child, what would that scene look like to you? Would it look calm? Would it look patient? Or would it look like a group of frightened people arriving at the last location connected to their missing son, demanding to know what had happened? That distinction matters. Because anger, panic, and confrontation do not automatically point to something criminal. When a location marker appears to stop making sense, and the people inside the house may have information you do not have, fear can take over quickly. So I am not interested in turning that reaction into evidence of something sinister. The question is different. Why is there reportedly so little of it in the official record? If members of Nolan's family were actually removed by police from 2 separate properties that night, as the account presented here alleges, then where is that documented? Was it recorded somewhere else? Was it omitted from the report? And who made that decision? Those questions deserve answers before anyone turns the incident into something it may not have been. But then another detail in the official record becomes much harder to overlook. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office report reportedly says deputies spoke with several friends who had been aboard the vessel with Nolan. According to the report, those individuals told investigators that Nolan had been left in the company of an unidentified woman. Read that wording carefully. On the vessel with Nolan? Because publicly, Morgan, Jackson, Warren have each reportedly said on multiple occasions that they were not aboard the same boat as Nolan that day. If those statements are accurate, then another question follows naturally. Who gave deputies that account? Someone had to provide the information recorded in the report. Someone apparently told an investigator that Nolan had been on the vessel with them. Yet 6 weeks later, the identity behind that particular account has not been publicly established in the material being discussed here. And that is worth examining without assuming what it means. Because the unanswered question leads directly to one person whose role sits at the center of almost every reconstruction of Nolan's final hours. Katie. Almost every version of what happened to Nolan on the island ultimately reaches her through someone else, through what another person says she told them, what someone believes happened between them, or how another witness interpreted the events. But there is one important limitation. The information is secondhand. Katie herself has not publicly described those final hours. 6 weeks have passed without a known interview, public statement, or direct account from her. That absence by itself does not establish wrongdoing, and fairness requires saying that clearly. There are many legitimate reasons someone close to a case might remain silent. Attorneys routinely advise people not to discuss active investigations. Families may also choose to protect a young person from intense public scrutiny, harassment, or speculation. Silence is not proof of guilt. It is not proof of innocence either. It is simply an absence of first-hand information. And that is what makes the gap significant. If Katie was directly present during some of Nolan's final hours, and her account could potentially clarify portions of the timeline that currently exist only through other people's descriptions. But until she speaks, or investigators release additional information that independently resolves those questions, that portion of the story remains incomplete. So, where does that leave the case? With a phone whose movement has not been fully explained, with questions surrounding how the initial Coast Guard notification actually occurred, with a police report containing an account attributed to people who, according to their public statements, say they were not aboard Nolan's boat, and with a potentially important first-hand perspective that has never been publicly presented. None of those details, individually or together, prove what happened to Nolan. They do, however, show how much of the timeline still depends on information passed from one person to another. And until the sealed material is released, additional evidence emerges, or someone with direct knowledge provides a clearer account, the complete story of Nolan Wells' final hours remains unresolved. This is not a closed case, simply because one version of events has become louder than the others. It is not solved because the public has chosen a theory. There are still unanswered questions. And until those questions are resolved by evidence, not speculation, the investigation deserves to remain open.